Good afternoon, Facebook. Good afternoon, everybody. June Allen here, your racial sobriety mentor from juneallen.net, and I teach black women how to heal from the impact of racism with revolutionary self-love. So, happy lunch, or wherever you were, wherever you're listening to me, or however you're watching me today. I hope you're having a good day. So, today's topic is all about how you can experience more love. How can you have more self-love? How can you generate more love in your relationship? So I just wanted to jump on and share some really simple things for you to explore, for you to think about, to jot down in your journal and explore how you can receive a lot more self-love. But before I get into that, I am going to share some housekeeping with you. So the housekeeping that I have for you this week is that this Saturday is this month's, the September Sacred Sister Circle, and we are going to be talking about the art of receiving love. The art of receiving love. So yeah, really excited about that. That is going to be 5 minutes from Bond Street. Okay, 5 minutes from Bond Street, from 9:30 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. So obviously it's based in London. So if you are in London and you would like to come down and join us for the workshop, then it would be lovely to see you. We also talk about the characteristics of self-hate, the tools for empowerment, and the promises and the miracles of sacred self-love. That's how you understand and you know when you are living in the amazing consequences of loving yourself. Okay, so there's so many different things for you to learn. So if you're interested in joining us for the book club, we are also studying, before I kind of get into it, it is a book club, so you need to know the book that we're reading if you don't know already. The book that we are reading is this book here, Bell Hooks, Sisters of the Yam. Absolutely love this book. So yeah, just really excited. We're going to read a portion of it later so you get a bit of an understanding. It doesn't matter if you've not actually read the whole book for you to come to the book club, because each chapter is around a different topic. So we focus specifically on that topic based on the month, and we kind of explore that. So it's actually okay if you haven't read the rest of the whole book. You can still come. You don't need to have read it before you come to the session. We read the book live in the session, so you don't need to rush out and buy a book or anything like that. There's always loads of copies that are available in the session. So I'd love to see you. So if you're interested, click the link in the bio, go to heal.juneallen.net. That's heal.juneallen.net. That's heal.juneallen.net, and join us for the book club. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, the second thing on the housekeeping is the Ghana retreat. The Ghana retreat in November. I'm super excited about the Ghana retreat in November from the 10th to the 16th. So the retreat itself is going to be hosted by myself and my amazing business partner, Faith Agugu, and she's a therapist based out in Australia. And we're going to be getting together to do this retreat in Ghana, and it's all going to be based around return to self. So we're going to be looking at how, you've internalized certain things from your family, from society, be it racism or dysfunction from your own family. We're going to be looking at all of that stuff. How is that created the person that you are today, and what you can do to return to the journey, to return to yourself. How can you take the tender journey back home to yourself? That is all what it's based around. So we're going to be looking at all of the issues, all of the external factors that have kind of created you to be kind of separated from yourself, and then we're going to take you through a series of amazing explorations for you to return to who you are, to the greatness of who you are, to redefine who you want to be, and to help you do that. There's also going to be a tour. There's an amazing hotel that we're going to be staying at. All the food and everything is included. Anything that you need to get on top of that is your flights. Okay, so again, click the link in the bio if you are interested in joining Faith and myself in Ghana. If you're ready to redefine and step into the woman that you want to be, then please join us on the 10th to the 16th of November this year. So that is great. So for those of you that have just joined, my name is June Allen from juneallen.net, and I teach black women how to heal from the impact of racism with racial sobriety and revolutionary self-love. So I came into doing this work. For those of you that don't know, I'll just give you kind of a brief overview. of what I'm up to and who I am. So I came into this work 9 years ago through addiction. I was addicted to self-hate. I was addicted to people pleasing. I was addicted to abandoning myself. I didn't feel good about myself. I came into recovery from doing this work off the back of a really painful relationship. And I knew that the common denominator in all of those relationships, all of the things that was going on in my life that was difficult, was me. So I had to figure out what was going on with me in order for me to get to the place where I was. So I went into the recovery process, had a really great time understanding, learning about myself, learning about the dysfunction. But I realised that as a result of doing that what was missing was the cultural context. I didn't really understand how being a black woman, how racism kind of played a part in that conversation. So that is where my exploration began around the whole concept of racial sobriety and all of that. So I began exploring, I began reading, a lot of books. I did some training initially as a psychotherapist. I did my foundation. And as a result of that, I really began to understand how, unhealed pain around racism is basically, created so much dysfunction in my life. I was really riddled with self-hate, and I'd absorbed so much negative stuff around racism that I was unable to have relationships. I had a lot of unhealed stuff around racism that I needed to heal. So that was really helpful, and I'm really happy to also report that I am going to be back. I'm going back to college next week to continue my journey as a psychotherapist. So I'm really excited about that. I kind of announced that last week, so I'm really excited about doing that. So yeah, that is basically how I got into doing this work. And the more I've learned and grown and explored my own journey, I'm just like, do you know what? I know that there's other people that are going to benefit from this. So I just began sharing, I began writing, I began talking a lot more on social media, sharing it publicly. And it's just been really nice to be able to get the feedback and to be able to support other people on their journey. And by sharing my story, beginning to help other people to understand, what it means to be racially sober, what it means to love yourself, what it means to set boundaries, what it means to self-parent, all of that deliciousness that we need in order to stand firm in the greatness of who we are as black women. So really grateful and humbled to be able to not only to continue my journey, and grateful for the support that I've received over the years in order to get to the place where I am now, but also having this opportunity to be able to support my community and to give back what was given to me, and also what I'm continuing to learn and grow on this journey. So really excited about that. So if you know anybody who would be interested in today's topic, which is how to experience more love, then feel free to share this out. I'm going to share this out actually first on my own page. So just give me 1 second, and I'm going to share it out to my own personal page. So that will be good. You just give me a minute. Oh, there I am. Where's the share button? Oh, I can't find the share button. It's very slow. Oh, there it is. Okay, so I'm going to share this to my personal page and in the group, and then that would be great. So post that. Okay, so if you know anybody that's going to be interested, that wants to experience more self-love, then by all means do that. Okay, I'm going to get into the content in a minute. Okay, so yes, so that's all done. Okay. Oh right, okay, so I need to do that. That's good. Right, okay, so let me just go back to my notes. No, it's not that one, this one. Right, oh no, it's the wrong one. What am I doing? Ah, found it. Okay, so I nearly had a moment there. Right, so let's now get into the content. So how can you experience more love? Hi, thanks for joining. How can you experience more love in your life? Right, so the first thing around experiencing more love is you have to be able to define what love is. Okay, do you know what love is? Do you really know what it is? For me, it's something that, you know, is something that I'm exploring all the time, and it's evolving all the time. And for those of us that have been, you know, that maybe you've been in families that were dysfunctional, that were abusive, that were challenging, for a lot of us it's really difficult to define it. It's a lot of us really hard for us to define it because our experience of love has actually been an abuse of trust. So therefore love becomes something that is dysfunctional, that's dangerous, that's kind of, you know, because we never really had the opportunity. For a lot of us as black people who grew up in homes where, you know, a lot of stuff was unhealed, a lot of dysfunction was unhealed, a lot of internalized racism is recycled, we don't understand what it means to not love ourselves or other people because it's not been our experience. It's not been our experience. So it's really hard to define love or to understand what love really is unless you actually do the internal work to discover and explore and define what love means to you. Okay, so, you know, it's about exploring, you know, how has love been for you as an adult? You know, be honest with yourself about how you currently define it. Is love always attached to some sort of drama? Yeah, and where does that behavior come from? You know, that's number 2 actually. It's about you being willing to tell the truth about what your experience of love is and what exactly is blocking it. What are the things that block it, and why is it that love feels so complicated? What is it about love that feels so scary? A lot of us find it hard to love, to be vulnerable, because again, being vulnerable for a lot of us growing up in dysfunctional homes or whatever, or as living under the system of racism, being vulnerable made us feel more exposed to being abused. You know, and when we're used to that, when we're used to being vulnerable, when we link vulnerability to being abused, it's very difficult for us to open up to other people. So we end up being closed off. We end up being unable to connect with other people in the way that we should be able to as human beings, because we're so closed off. And quite often, you know, one of the consequences of living under the system of racism, especially when we're talking about, you know, intergenerational trauma and stuff like that, it's very hard to allow yourself to experience love when you're so used to, you know, having to hide who you are. You can't experience, you know, love is about vulnerability. Love is about being willing to take risks and be vulnerable with another person, to actually reveal yourself to another person, to allow yourself to, you know, nurture your own self-growth and, you know, nurture the self-growth of somebody else. These are some of my definitions of love. It's being able to accept myself, you know, and I can't do any of these things for other people unless I do these things for myself. So it's about self-acceptance, first and foremost. I can't accept anybody else as a human being until I accept myself as a human being. You know, when we talk about unconditional love and all of that kind of stuff, how can you love somebody else unconditionally if you grew up in an environment where love was conditional, where you were only loved if you did certain things, where you were only loved if you behaved a certain way, where you were only quote unquote loved by family members or whatever if you were, you know, if you had to abandon yourself? A lot of us were raised in families and environments or relationships where, you know, we experience love as something that we have to give up ourselves. We have to sacrifice who we are as black women in order for us to stay in those relationships. Hi, thanks for joining. And that can be a really painful place to be, and it's a really unhealthy place to be. We've this whole thing around abandoning ourselves as black people is something that we've been taught under the system of racism, that we don't really matter, and that love only happens to us if we kind of deny who we are. We're only worthy of love from somebody else if we deny who we are. We're only worthy of staying inside the family unit if we deny who we are, if we don't talk about the way that our parents treated us or siblings treated us or whatever. Somehow we're supposed to deny all of that and ignore all of that in order to stay in relationship with those people. And these are things that we've learned that is actually denying our ability to really love from an authentic place. to love from an unconditional place, to love from a place of growth, of greatness, of clarity, of beauty. We can't embrace all of these things if, you know, our experience of love is something that hurts, is something that is painful, of something that where we have to deny who we are. That's not love. That's codependency. You know, and we're in these situations because a lot of us were raised in homes where that is our experience of love, because that's what happens when you're in relationship with people, i.e. when you grew up in family environments where, you know, certain things were not healed, where the dysfunction has not been healed, where racism was internalized and unhealed. These are things that are the residue of all of those things mean that the attachment, the bonding, all of that stuff that's required as human beings for us to attach to each other, those things are destroyed when there's stuff that's gone on in the family that remains unhealed, when the trust is broken. You know, what we learn as children is how we behave in our relationships as adults. That is the truth of it. A lot of the reasons why a lot of us as adults, you know, as black people, the reason why so many people struggle with love in their relationships as adults is because, you know, of our experience is, you know, number one, as growing up in the family unit, that experience is going to impact that. And also how we also have to look holistically at how racism has impacted that relationship as well. Because for me personally, I mean, my parents are from Jamaica. And you know, they came over to England in the early 60s and all the rest of it. But you know, I also understand through doing my own healing work that my parents came over to from Jamaica, but also Jamaica was was a slave farm for 240 odd years or whatever it is. So you know, and none of my ancestors went to therapy. They had no healing or nothing like that. So how on earth do we expect, you know, this generation now, or my parents' generation, to be able to take care of us emotionally? You know, we've had those conversations around, oh, you know, well, I'll put the light on, you've got shoes on your feet, that means I love you. That's one aspect of it. But there's also, in order for us to be able to bond physically, we also have to have an emotional connection. You know, there's in this book that we're studying for the book club on Saturday, there's an amazing paragraph in there where she talks about, let me read it, hang on. Okay, so she says on page 98, our collective difficulties with the art and act of loving began in the context of slavery. It should not shock us that a people who was forced to witness their young being sold away, their loved ones, companions and comrades beaten beyond all recognition, a people who knew unrelenting poverty, deprivation, loss, unending grief, and the forced separation of family and kin, would emerge from the context of slavery wary of this thing called love. Okay? So in that sense, if our ancestors were put through that, and a lot of our ancestors didn't go to, you know, never had any therapy or any sort of healing process when they left the plantations, that stuff is going to, at some level, is going to be recycled within the family. So the way that shows up is our parents' inability to be able to connect with us emotionally. We have a very disjointed experience of what love is, because, you know, when you're in pain, it's very difficult to love yourself or love somebody else when you're in pain. And I've kind of gone off on a little bit of a tangent in a sense, but you know, it's about us being able to tell the truth about what is blocking it. You know, what aspects of how do you feel about yourself as a black woman, and how does that impact the way that you love? Is there historical intergenerational stuff that's been passed down through your family that's still impacting who you are as a black woman? Is there contemporary stuff going on in society that impacts how you feel about yourself as a black woman, and how that plays out in terms of your love relationships? How does that happen? You've got to be willing to tell the truth, not only about how you define love, but how it shows up in your life, how it shows up in your relationships. What are the things that are blocking your ability to love? Yeah? What are the things that are blocking your ability to love? If you're not willing to tell the truth about those things, and you're always kind of looking externally to what the other person can give you, because that's a lot of the times how we end up playing this stuff out. We think that the other person has to give us, has to make us feel loved, has to give us these things, has to buy us these things. So we end up externalizing love when we don't really have love for ourselves. And this is where I come on to number 3. The third way to experience more love is to be intentional about doing the things, nurturing the things that feel loving for yourself, okay, before you can ask of it of anybody else. If you're not doing loving things for yourself, or you're not being loving towards yourself, how do you expect somebody else to be loving to you? Because you don't think you deserve it. If you're not doing it for yourself, you obviously don't think that you deserve it. So how do you expect somebody else externally to give you that thing that you don't think you deserve to be doing it for yourself? So it's about, asking yourself the questions about how you can be more nurturing to yourself, how you can be more loving to yourself. How can you begin to really be intentional about how you take care of yourself, about how you self-parent? These are a lot of the fundamental principles that I teach in the work that I do. As part of the book club that we do on Saturday, we always read out, I have a list of characteristics of what self-hate looks like, so they can see how self-hate manifests in their behaviors. And obviously if they identify with it, then they've got somewhere to start. Then we also talk about the tools for empowerment. What are the behaviors, what are the actions that they need to take in order to love themselves a lot more? So again, it gives them a starting point to begin to start to practice the behaviors that are going to not only nurture their own self-love, but to, when you change from the inside and you start doing this stuff for yourself, then energetically you are going to attract other people that are going to mirror what you're doing for yourself. Okay. And then the third thing that we talk about in the book club is the promises of self-love. What does it look like when I'm actually healing? How am I going to feel when I'm practicing self-love? Okay, so you've got like a benchmark. These things that we read, you've got like a benchmark of what it looks like, the type of behaviors, the type of feelings that you're going to experience when you're actually loving yourself. So you've got different ways to measure yourself, to measure your self-love process. Hi, thanks for joining. Which is going to be really great. Which is going to be really, really great for you to be able to really understand and experience a lot more love. So if you are interested in joining us for the book club on Saturday, go to heal.juneallen.net. That's heal.juneallen.net. That's heal.juneallen.net. And the same with the Ghana trip. The Ghana trip is all about return to self. It might be that you've never ever really had this conversation with yourself about, who am I and what is love? And you just and spent most of your life kind of getting on with it and thinking that, I'm just going to do the best I can. And you never really had that conversation. You've never really given yourself permission to actually define what it is and what you need. And I think that's where a lot of us are struggling, because we're expecting somebody else externally to kind of make us feel good about ourselves. But we don't really understand why we feel the way we feel. And we don't really understand how to actually nurture ourselves. That's where it starts. That's where it starts. We have to be willing to nurture and love ourselves first before anybody else can do it for you. And you hear people say that. People throw that statement out all over the place. Oh, you have to love yourself first. But they don't really talk about how. What does that actually mean? What does that actually look like in practical terms? What does I love myself actually mean in practical terms? Okay, and that is the work that I do. That is the stuff that I do. That is the stuff that is so important to this process. Not just to talk about it, but to actually give you tools as to what it means and what it looks like. So if you really you're ready to do the work, and you're ready to really start to explore what it means to love yourself and how you can attract more love into your life and experience more love, then those are the 3 things that you need to do. You need to first define what love means to you. Second thing is you need to be willing to tell the truth and process what is blocking it. Process the things that are blocking your ability to love. And the third thing is you have to be willing to do for yourself what you're asking other people to do for you. Yeah, those are 3 things that you need to do to experience more love. So if you know somebody who's interested in that, or somebody that needs to experience more love and wants to know how, then share it with them. If there's anything at all that I've shared with you today that you'd like to talk about in a lot more detail, you can schedule a call with me at callme.juneallen.net. If you're interested in joining us for the Ghana trip in November, or joining us for the book club on Saturday, all about the art of receiving love, we'll be going into a lot more detail about it, then you can click the link in the bio, go to heal.juneallen.net. That's heal.juneallen.net. That's heal.juneallen.net. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you choosing to spend time with me. Again, if you've got any other questions, you can also email me at info@yardofgreatness.com, or you can send me a direct message. Thank you for joining me today, and I will see you next time. I'm sending you lots of love. Take care. Bye bye.